What types of teams have you been involved in?
I did every kind of advantage play you can imagine. Bottom steering, sorting, depth charging.
Roulette?
Bought a wheel and I learned how to clock a wheel. So I hired people and they went downtown 100 times and they clocked what everything was.
What's the most unique advantage play that you've witnessed?
Some guys have taken advantage of shufflers. They will get a hold of a shuffler, reverse engineer a shuffler, and there's a lot of them that can be beat.
What's your opinion on AI, facial recognition?
There are makeup techniques. You can throw them off. Whatever they come up with, we're going to beat. It's just a matter of fact.
We're joined today by Max Rubin, who is a longtime gambling industry expert, a highly experienced advantage player, and one of the most recognizable voices in the advantage play blackjack world. Max is also the author of Comp City and the founder of the Blackjack Ball and the Blackjack Hall of Fame. Max, thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me. This is the first YouTube I've ever done.
Nice.
So this is nice. I'm glad to be here and with you.
Awesome. Well, do you mind telling us, how did you first fall into or get introduced into advantage play?
I was introduced into advantage play long after I was introduced to cheating. I came here in Las Vegas. I was 18 years old. My daddy was a crossroader. His daddy was a crossroader. Those are guys that rob from casinos. And I'm 18 years old. I'm coming out here. I got a track scholarship. And they said, "You want to make some money?" And I said, "Well, yeah, what do I have to do?" And I had to get into a fist fight. And the first one was in the Las Vegas club. And we start a fight right by the pits. And another guy that could run pretty fast, too. And we start yelling and screaming at each other and punching. And I don't care who you are. If you're standing on a corner and Tiger Woods is hitting golf balls and LeBron is shooting and whoever in the world it is doing whatever they are and two bums get in a fight in the middle of the street, you're going to watch the bums. People like to watch fights. They just stop. And we would start this, and everybody would turn their heads. And when they did, my dad's team of bandits would reach into the pit podiums and take cards out. And they would take those cards home and mark them up and then make coolers that they would switch under the dealers' noses. And what was so crazy about it is then we'd make some money. And then we'd go to the Silver Slipper, and I'm 18 years old, and drink whiskey and tip the girls and be broke by about midnight. And this went on every day in these guys' life. It just drove me crazy. And so I finally pulled up, but it took a long time. But I was fracturing statues for a long time. And then I'm in my 22, 23, and I'm in the business, and I'm going to hotel school and all that. And I just said, I'm getting out of this. So I got to figure out something else. And the first book I read was by Wong on figuring out how you could do this legally. And so I figured it out while I was at work. I just learned how to count while I was dealing. I've always been ADD, so I work really hard all the time and everything's happening quickly. So I just learned how to count. And then when I was on the floor, I could count three different games at once on my teeth and my fingers and just keep going. I loved all that stuff. So I learned a little bit about that. But I knew some guys that wound up to be top guys in the business, and between Munchkin and Daryl and some other guys, and I did every kind of advantage play you can imagine. We did bottom steering, and we did sorting, and we did depth charging, and we did so many of these plays that are highly, highly sophisticated. And I was with, and I had a good reputation. I always knew how to count the money right, and so I got more and more into that and learning how it could work. And then I still had to work in the business a couple times, and I'd had big businesses, and I went broke, and I've had big businesses, and I went broke, and this is crazy, but I always enjoyed it when I didn't have money because it made me creative, and I'd start a new business and do even better. So I've always been built that way.
And how did you meet these other advantage players when you got interested in it?
Well, I met originally a guy named Phil Barrier, who was part of all that, and he was dealing up at Lake Tahoe, and he's a friend of my brother's. My brother's had it's called Barney's at the time, and one was chief of security and one was running something else, and my dad was chief of surveillance at that place. It was just, we had everything wired in the whole place. We had the Keno department, we had the food, we had the table games. Everybody's just taking out the money every day, and you didn't even think anything about it in those days. It's just, but every joint in town, and my uncles were choppers, and these were guys that they stayed at home and they waited till they got the phone call. And somebody'd be winning a lot of money, and they'd go in, and they got to keep 10%, and they'd just go in and take a guy's money. And I asked him one time, "How do you have the stones to take somebody's money right in front of him?" He said, "When you do what I do, you don't make mistakes." He said, "If you do, you're going to die." But they used to do that. So, yeah, my uncle used to do that. He had some great moves. He had great hands.
So a chopper is a mechanic?
A mechanic, right, that would stay at home and come in and work for the casino. And they would just call, I need you in here and come whack this guy for me. But he worked for the Sands and the Desert Inn.
So you met Barry, and then where did things go from there?
And then I met Phil. And then
sorry.
Phil Barrier. And then I'd gone through a few things, and oh God, Mirage was opening up, and I wanted to be a writer. I'd gone through a thing. Did an IPO on a business, and it crashed, and I was just so tired of being tired and starting business. So I'm going to go to work for my friends that are building the Mirage, and I'm just going to deal cards because I think I can be a writer. And so I started writing, and I won the Nevada Screenwriting Award for the best screenplay for the year. And I can. Okay. And then I said, I'm going to write about something else. And I kept studying this, and then it was an interesting thing. My friend Joe Wilcock, he ran table games there for Steve Wynn, and I was dealing Mr. Wynn's continuous shuffler. He had a shuffle machine that he invented because he didn't want to pay anyone else. I got on this, and I remembered that thing Lefty, my dad, told me many, many, many years before I was out of high school, that there's a little edge on the cards you could read. And he didn't have a cover on it. And I started dealing, and I was on there, and I'm making good enough money to survive, but I've got to play on the side doing some things. And I'm dealing, and I said, I wonder if this would happen. And I read big card, and it was little. So I just picked them up and put them in like that. Then I read this, and I would turn this. And in about 20 minutes, I had about 80% of all the 3 decks turned perfectly. And I started trying it, and it was working. And I went, holy crap. Wow, I can do this from the inside. And I'm not on the floor. I did not want to go on the floor because this was my friend who gave me the job, and I had weekends off so I could gamble. And I said, I got to show you something. He said, what? I said, let's just use a deck. I'm just going to use one. And I dealt this deck, and I dealt it again, and I went boom, 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 boom. He said, pick a pile. He turned those. Those are about 90% faces and aces, and these are all the little cards. And he said, what did you just do? I said, I can't tell you, but I'm not a thief, but if I was at the Playboy Mansion every day for the next 5 years, I would fall, and I can't deal anymore. I said, I can't help myself. That's all I think about. I said, I'm going to whack you. I got to go on the floor. And he put me on the floor. And when he did, I started learning about the comp system. And I learned something where the casino, this was Steve Wynn, as sophisticated as you get on earth, they assumed you were losing 2% per hand. 2%. When in fact, you were losing, if you played basic strategy, 0.22. So that's for starters. Now, if you could manage to move your bets around and get a bigger bet and you trick the boss and you do a few things, I figured out how for about a nickel on the dollar, you could have the greatest vacations in the world. And then we figured out how to make money off them. We started selling them underground and selling them through the ticket brokers and the rest. So we'd take our comps and then we'd just sell those. And so to the Voodoo Lounge, and this is coming. And it was so fun. And I am coming down a ski lift, and it breaks up at Lake Tahoe. And it's rocking, and all my friends are there, and we had the whole top floor of a place, and I'm betting 3 by 10,000. It's crazy. I'm a hot shot up there for Tahoe at the time. And we break, and we're in the lift, and we're looking down, and my wife said, you ought to write a book. You ought to write a book about this life. And I said, think so? And so I got back, and I told Anthony Curtis, and he said, well, you bring me an idea about every 2 days. He said, this one's going to stick. And I started working. It took me about a year, and it was a 600-page book, and they had to edit it down to 300 pages, but it worked. And you could absolutely play the comp game and win and make money doing it. And play a break-even game. John Johnson took it to a whole nother level with the rebates and all the rest. And there still are rebate games out there, by the way, where they're giving away way more money than they can make.
And there's still people beating the comp systems for a good living.
Oh, yeah. There's still people beating the comp system, which makes me happy. So
you've played with a lot of people. What types of teams have you been involved in?
We've had bottom steering teams, and we're cutting and steering one card. That takes a lot of coordination because you got to have a card eater on first base who's also signaling what they got. You set a guy in the center, so if you get the cut, you go for 22 and you want to steer a face card into here, and a face ace is worth 13%. Of course, An ace is worth 52%, but you can flat bet all day and they will never suspect a thing. So you take your normal swings. Let's say I bet 2 by 1,000. I'm giving up about $5 a hand, right?
Yeah.
But if I steer myself just one ace or one face card, I'm getting 13%. All of a sudden there's $130 making up for that $5. So it's all you have to do is that, but you have to be able to communicate. You have to have mnemonic devices. Every single card has a word, and everybody is talking, and this guy's looking and say, I didn't get it, I didn't get it, they didn't get it third. Now you know that 6 is in the hole. Whoa, this is going to be strong. So now you're playing a 26% advantage on all your hands right off the top. And the bosses never snap to it. They just don't. The problem is you have to play as a team, so you can't act like you're strangers. So you have to pretend you're a family and you all like to play together at the same time. But that was a really good one. Depth charging was really good. You could play a lot, but we only spread 1 to 2 units. It was table max and half table max. That's all it was. I played two hands at the end. We have a card eater in the middle, and then we have a pros pro sitting in the center who's calling the signals. And we're playing at places like Caesar, and I'm taking $90,000 swings in a day. It was crazy, but they couldn't snap to that we were counting. We were only playing with a 0.5% edge. Because of that, with one bank, it took us over 1,000 hours to make bank.
Wow.
And it turns out a guy made a mistake in the math. It wasn't as good as we thought it was, but it eventually made bank. But it happens, and I know a team that made bank in a weekend.
Wow.
It just happens. It's just crazy what happens to you. We had a lot. We had sorting. We were playing that. We were playing next card. We were playing key cards, had key people that were memorizing the sequences. We had that. We used a lot of technology up until 11:45 on, I think it was night 2001 or 2. We were at the Hustler Club with Keith Taft sitting at his house with a guy who was programming behind him. None of this was illegal in California at the time, so he's standing and he's got little keypad here, some in his pants. He's sending the signals. They are transferring those signals up to Sacramento, calculating and sending it back down and buzzing the leg of the guy who's the BP, and he's betting, and we're all on the game and saving cards, moving cards, steering them around. It was just awesome, and nobody snapped to it at all.
Was that happening within one hand?
Well, every hand we had information, and we could double. We knew doubles were coming because it was a single pass shuffle.
I see. Yes.
So they were just doing this, and we knew where all the cards were laid, and we just crushed them. And then at about 11:45, we said, about time to leave, boys, and get out of here. So we played that one. That was really successful. I played a few times with some computers that did pretty well. Played with some wheel teams, and I did it myself.
Roulette?
I learned, bought a wheel, and I learned how to clock a wheel, and I got to where I could win, and I could spin the ball, and if I got 4 spins left, I could put it in a spot about that big. I could see where it was going if we got bias wheels. So I hired people, and they went through all of it, and they went downtown 100 times, and they clocked. This is when the boards came out, and we clocked what everything was. So then we found partial probabilities. Then we found a few that actually worked, and we did some of that. And then they changed a wheel head on us, and we didn't see it, and we got crushed.
Oh, wow.
They actually picked it up and finally changed it. The spotters had put little marks with lip balm on the wheel heads, and we forgot to notice that the wheel heads had been changed, and those numbers weren't coming in anymore, so they snapped to a little bit. But
when's the last time you've heard of someone exploiting a biased wheel?
Not that long ago. Oh, yeah. It's there's a few guys. Mark Billings is really good. Larry, there's some guys that are pretty good. I mean, there's guys. Mark played in over 52 countries, I think it was, playing the wheel. They made a lot of money on that wheel. And they're still making money. There's still guys that are clocking the wheel. There are guys that can clock the wheel that you can't see the ball, where you spin it in Europe, and they still know how many spins it's going to go and where it's going to go. But, yeah.
And then comp teams.
Oh, comp teams were just the greatest. BJ Traveler, some of those, he reportedly brought in over $50 million. And Caesar's Palace put in a policy that 20% quick loss. And so what he would do, I call it, I don't know if this is racist, but he would literally take these Chinese, and he was Chinese, out of the crates. They have passports, right? Well, casinos, and this is the most racist thing you can imagine, but casinos have something called Asian airfare. Each player gets $9,000 if they put up $100,000, if and only if they're Asian. But if you put up $1 million, you only get $35,000. So they would cobble together all these people from L.A. with passports, bring them up here, and they each got paid $9,000 up front for showing up. He took all of that, so he's up $90,000 before he ever makes a bet. Now he's putting them all up in an apartment. He takes the hotel rooms and he's selling those. He takes the food, he's selling that. And they're all playing this game, and he's got spotters for him. So he died recently, but he made just ridiculous amounts of money. But some other Hall of Famers made a lot of money on that rebate system.
Any other kinds of teams? Card counting teams?
Oh yeah, I was with card counting teams. I've tried with a number of those. We had one called Craps when we all got together at the first time, called Casino Rounders Always Prosper, and we went to Australia, and I wrote something about that.
That's
once.
right.
And, yeah. We went over there. I played with that team, and that was Frank Schipani, who was in the Hall of Fame, and Diamond Mike, and 6 top pros. And we went over to Australia for 3 weeks. We had more fun. But we got barred. I got barred from the whole continent. I can't play anywhere over there. They told me at the airport too, but they could not have been nicer. And so, unlike other places, I just said I will take everybody's monies back because I won $42,000. Nobody else even won. So I just packed all the money on me and all our bankrolls, and I walked through. I had over $100,000 on me. They never even looked at it. I just declared it, and I got here. They never even looked at it. You know, if you declare, you don't get in trouble. It's when you try to get cute.
Yeah.
And don't ever try to get cute.
That's right.
They will ruin your life. Yeah.
What's your most memorable comp?
Well, I had 12 girls that went to high school with me in a little oil patch town. 3 of them had never been on an airplane, and 4 or 5 had never left Texas, and they came out here. And at the time, I was really playing big, and there's a restaurant called 9 at the Palms, and it was nice. And then they had a private room that seated about 15, and I took that room, and I ordered the entire menu, everything for everybody, and everybody got a bottle of champagne. Anyway, we had a $6,000 meal with these girls that had never been in a limo, and we took them on a limo, and then they got to go meet Celine Dion before her show and taking pictures and do all this. And then John Voight, of all people, and I never knew him at all, he's walking by. They thought this was part of what I'm doing for him. And I said, John Voight. And he went, where? And I looked around. He could not have been nicer to these girls. He talked to them for 5 or 10 minutes, said, oh, that's so cool you got that. And I said, oh, that's not the deal. Now you're going backstage and you're going to see Celine before the show. That was a really nice comp. So I took advantage of some of those. That one was, that made me look like a real hero with my friends. So,
what made you want to write Comp City?
I discovered what a soft thing the comps were. I almost couldn't believe it at first, and I'd break it down and say, okay, well, if we're playing this and we've got a half a point, or wait a minute, that's 2% they're giving me. Well, if I bet $100 and they're giving me 2%, they're giving me $2 and I'm losing 20 cents. Yeah. How's this work? And I kept doing it. And I said, it absolutely worked. And when I wrote the book, everybody started doing it. And it really irritated the casinos. And of course, here are these casinos. They're such wonderful wonderful humans. At the Stardust, they printed my book and made every floor supervisor read it. But they printed it there. They wouldn't buy the book, of course. But it just shows you the thought processes in these guys. But I've had so many fun comps and trips all over the place. So I've had a lot of those. Really enjoyed that high life. And they really treat you better than anywhere else you ever get treated. If you're getting treated that high life in Vegas, it's fun. You can get used to it and spoil you.
I've heard that there's some more advanced technique comp hustles that you kept out of the book. Is that true?
Oh yeah. Bribing is very big. You go in and instead of giving a guy, they're not allowed to take anything worth more than $25. That's just the rule. Well, you can't give them much, so I'd go in and get them. I'd find out who their team was, and for the weekend, I'd buy them $25 parlays each day, and then say, "How's my average bet? I really need a bet. Okay, we'll do that." So little tricks like that. You just bring in the tie, you bring this, but people love to be in with you for the weekend betting on the same thing. So you ask them who they like, and you go make a bet, and you act like you make one for yourself. You don't care. I don't bet sports unless the smart guys tell me, but But there's a lot of hustling and a lot of hustle still out there in the sports betting, but I'm just not around it anymore. I'm so out of my depth these days. It's a different world.
If you were to rewrite Comp City today, what might be different and what might be the same?
I'm not sure. I almost think I should have slow played it back then and not told people quite as much. A lot of people said, "Why'd you give that up?" Jelko was very funny about it. He said, "Well, it needed to be said. People were going to figure it out finally." And some other guys have tried to do it, but they never really made it simple for people to understand how really easy it is. And it's third grade math, fourth grade. This isn't card counting. This isn't anything else. You just bet and they give you more than you lose. But they started changing. They started changing damn fast. By 2003 or 4, they were giving you 1%, and then they got tight. And then they went really bad the other way. But I think overall, for that slight moment in time, I made over $100,000 off of Comp City, and that's a lot of money for a first-time writer. And now when I'm speaking, they listen. And I started publicly speaking and starting getting paid for it. I was making pretty good money for speaking too. But all those things fell in, and it was all stuff I just loved, having a good time. So I wrote about having a good time, and then I got to talk about it and got to make a lot of money doing it. So it's pretty good.
While consulting for Barona, what's the most unique advantage play that that you can share that you witnessed
At Barona?
Or anywhere, I guess.
Boy, the best advantage plays. I think in my lifetime, the best advantage plays as an advantage play, not something else. I think the best advantage play is Mike Mihalik. He invented something called shuffle tracking. And every human that saw it after that went,
yeah.
Wait a minute. You mean you grab this and you take... Nobody ever thought about that. Now that is an advantage play. The bosses never knew anything about it, and Steve Forty wound up selling it to Caesar's Palace for $25,000. Then they stiffed him.
Wow.
Oh yeah. So Tommy Highland, a lot of people hate Steve Forty because he sold it, but I don't know. Steve's getting back in the action though. He's back too, so it's interesting. But I've seen a lot of things. I saw a guy who played for over a year at the Mirage who could track and cut the dealer shuffle, and nobody else would stop him, and I knew what he was doing. And I'd say, "I can't believe they're letting you keep playing." He goes, "What are you talking about?" And I had the dealer stripped twice. He said, "Oh, the party's over." I said, "No, it's not. I'm not changing the rules. I just want to see what you did if we stripped the cards one more time." But it wasn't my job to stop him. It just wasn't, because he was using a very sophisticated, skinny game too. But he could see the bottom card, and he would cut, and he would try to steer that to him, and he'd do that a couple times an hour. But when you bet like he did, and he was betting 500 to 1,000 every hand, 1 or 2 cards an hour is all the difference in the world, and you never snap to it. So I was there all the time watching him. I said, "Are you doing that?" "Oh, you're getting that. That's what you're doing." He'd go, "I don't do anything." But long story with this guy, but yeah, that was one of my favorites. It took me a long time to snap to that one. Fun ones I played are hole cards. Hole cards are really fun if you're getting them and you have ignorant bosses and you got them right where you want them when they fold their arms and glare. That's my favorite time on a game, because the boss had just told me I don't know what I'm doing. That's something I always tell everybody, do that. As soon as they fold their hands, you're in good shape. But also when you play with the shoe, and this one lasted a long time, a shoe will get fatigued after about 8 hours. And if you'll look at the side of the cards looking straight down on the shoe, and I can't say much more, I'll show you something, but you can see little spots on cards. It's called spot betting. If you're smart as James Grosjean, some of those guys, he can memorize every spot and memorize them for 6 hours. And if you set it first and you're looking down and you see those cards go away, you can drop that card anywhere you want it. Wow. And they just get nicked and banged. And if you're patient, but he's the kind of guy that's patient. He will sit there 3 hours to get a 21% edge once and then bet 10,000. I don't have that patience, and I don't have his memory power. But the really, really brilliant guys can do that. And as you know, in the AP world, probably half of the good ones are on the spectrum. somewhere. And a lot of them are way over on the spectrum. That doesn't make them bad. It means them wicked smart, right? But they're different. They just are.
What about cheating? What are the most sophisticated cheating techniques you've seen?
Imagine a stack of chips, and they're $5 chips, okay? What it really is a plastic, hollowed out device that is painted to look like a stack of chips. So if you're dealing craps, you go around and he bets the field right here. So you either pay him with your chips, but what you've done is you're picking up the other chips, you're holding them inside there. So you may have as much as $125 in green chips, you can have $500 in black chips, and they bet the field, and you go out and pay them, and they pick it up and squeeze it and drop the chips in here, and they bet it again. They won millions of dollars with this all over. A dealer a lot of us knew back then got murdered over it, and then it became a big deal. And he didn't get paid, so he went to this guy's house with a pistol and a guy's shotgun, and then the whole thing blew open, and they found out what was happening in South Africa. They took off Sun City for tens of, I don't know if tens of millions, but certainly lots and lots and lots, and they never snapped to it until this happened, and then word got out, and it's not as good anymore. But that's one of the great moves that I'd never seen. Also, some guys have taken advantage of shufflers. Over the years, they will reverse engineer a shuffler, get a hold of a shuffler. I might know guys that could get used shufflers, and guys would take them and break them down, and there's a lot of them that could be beat. The best, till they got stupid about it again, the best cheat move I've seen, they were aristocrat machines, and there were some Williams, and when they shut down Russian casinos, and they used to have a lot of Russian casinos, and Putin said no more, they have all of these machines, and they're all electronic, and they've got all these Russian rocket scientists, so they started breaking it down, and they figured out the seed for one of these where they could call from Russia, and within a 0.2 of a second give you a signal, and you could hit it, and you would fall within a range and win. And these dumb bastards had their phones out doing this while they were doing it, and they finally snapped to that, but they won a whole bunch of millions doing it. But if they'd been smarter and had an earpiece and pushing something here, I don't think they'd have snapped to that forever. That one's pretty slick. So whatever can happen will happen. So you try to figure out how they're going to get to it. I know if somebody's not doing something, if I can make the guy's bets for him, he ain't doing nothing. Just a fact of life. Yeah. But we teach our people never, ever sweat the money. We don't sweat at Verona, and we try to be nice to everybody. Some people are jerks about it. You know Mickey Mace?
Yes.
Mickey Mace came in our place.
Uh-huh.
And they trash the room, of course, and then he goes downstairs and he starts giving people shit. And we threw him out, not for being a pro. We threw him out for assholery. He's a jerk.
People ask me about him and say, no, clearly, if you listen to what he says, he's not an advantage player. And they say, oh, so you don't think that he got kicked out? I'm like, no, I'm sure he got kicked out, but not for advantage play.
Not for advantage play. And I happen to put the word out for him that if he thinks he's that good, I got somebody that'll match him for as much as you want to bet. You know, the friends we have, they'll take his bet all day. If he's got a 2% edge, this guy will put up $50,000 a hand. Deal all day. He doesn't have a winning system, but he's just a scammer.
Yeah.
I don't like guys like him.
What else do you wish that other casino operators knew about actually card counting and advantage play?
The reality is, we're killing blackjack out there. This 6-5 just isn't right. Teach your people how to watch a game. You're not making money off of 6-5. And if they're betting a lot of side bets or something, you can make a little bit. But the casinos are really off base there. And these bosses, you think they're going to get fired for smiling. They don't engage anybody. I go out on the strip. It's the most remarkable thing to me. If you don't know, like we walk in the pit at any time at Verona and you've got your 3 tables, tell me who they are. Without looking, who are they? We turn our screens to the inside. The dealers know everybody's names. The bosses know everybody's names. We make lifetime friendships with people. We make people feel good. It's our job. And half these joints, they don't even know you're alive. You go in, you lose your money. They didn't even, you got a card? No. They just walk away. Okay. But that's what I would do. I would start trying, once again, hiring nice people to do the job. But I don't know. I'm just like that. I think people are in a casino to have a good time. Most of them are. Some of us are out there trying to make a little money. That's okay, but it's so important for the pros to stop acting like a pro. And it's just happens all day. Half of the people we bar at Barona are barred before they ever make a bet. We know that. They're wearing a black hoodie. They're wearing a black mask. They might be wearing black sunglasses. They're not going to get rated. They're going to sit at third base, and they're going to wait till all the cards there, and they're going to look down at the rack, and they're going to have all of these red flags that we're trained just to look for. We don't have to watch them bet. We know they'll bet bigger toward the end. Watch all these other things. You don't even have to watch the hands. You just know they're doing something, right?
Yeah, it's an amateur pro.
It is. It's an amateur pro. It's a guy that just doesn't understand the value of certain things. And frankly, long term, if you want to buy some time, is just bet big off the top a couple times when the boss is watching. What are you giving up? What if you bet $500? What's it going to cost you? $1?
Yeah, a buck or two.
Yeah. But if you got the bankroll, I'm not saying to be cavalier. If you're starting off, you can't throw away $500 bets either. Yeah. But you could throw away something analogous. You could throw away a $50 bet, and just to get the bosses off. But there are really dangerous big counters, and there are a lot of nickel and dime counters that can't possibly make more than $10 an hour. Yeah. But the problem is they're breathing our air. They're taking our seat. We have a very limited number of seats. We just don't want any unprofitable guests.
Bill Zender, when we interviewed him, he talked about they've done studies that when the house edge is above about 1%, people gamble less. But then they're, like you said, putting these 6 to 5, these games
right.
that are actually cutting off their noses despite their face, that they're costing themselves money with the money grab of the high edge games rather than thinking like a business person.
Right. You can make the money off the side bets on that game if you're going to. You don't have to do that. Bill's got a good understanding of a lot of that, how to treat people. He's good that way too. He's a smart man.
What does a back-off look like at Barona? What do you look for?
Well, I can tell you one with Ben.
Sure.
You remember that when I borrowed him?
I was there with him. I was up in the room.
Yeah. So Ben's downstairs, and it's about 4 a.m. and I go over and I'm talking to somebody else and I hear insurance. Well, I always look when I hear insurance, and I look over and here's a guy, he's got 2 by 5. I think that's your normal bet at that point when it was good, right? Something like that. And he insures a 14. And then he surrenders it. And I talked to the guy, said, no recreational gambler in the history of the world took insurance with a 14 and then surrenders it. Then he gets 2 10s against a 6 and he splits them. And that's when I said, don't they teach you anything about limit cover up in Washington? He went, what? Are you Max Rubin? I said, yeah. Oh, no. I said, I'm going to make you guys a deal. You want to come to the ball? You guys can come to the Blackjack Ball. If you stop playing here, you're wearing my ass out.
It's a good trade-off.
It was. It was good for you. It was good for us. But
I played at Verona, and that was kind of exciting. And they were actually really cool. I felt like they run their place well. I mean, they were like really respectful, and they were actually really nice to me.
Normally, we like to say, you mind if I just watch, man? I love to watch a pro in action. And or they'll make so. I'd have made that move too. What you using a plus minus? What do you got there? You got a high up? That's pretty good. They don't want to look at you. You're busted. But I've had a lot. I guess my favorite barring was one morning. It's about 6 and I hear that some guys are up 11 or 12,000 playing war. Okay. Mm-hmm. People play war, all this. Okay. So I start going upstairs and I hear them talking. So I said, okay, this is going to be fun. So casino manager's there and I walk over to say, do you guys know Jelko? And the guy said, no, but my brother does. He's, and he stopped. He said, we're barred, aren't we? And I go, yeah, you are. You can't be doing that. Let's have breakfast. And we did. And we spent a lot of time. They were playing sound. They were playing sound off of a continuous shuffler machine. And what happens is there are 12 separate pockets. And each one fills up. And then it goes to another one. They go. But if it goes, the card that went in last comes out right behind the key card, and the reader memorized that. So one guy's sitting there just listening really hard. He's right on top of the machine, and the other guy's memorizing all the cards as they're coming to see which ones are going to make that noise, right? And they're whacking. They won $800,000 at Mohegan Sun.
Wow.
And the cops came, raided the room, found cards. They said, these are marked. They weren't marked. Nobody was doing it. They were playing sound.
Wow.
And they beat it. So that was one of my favorite.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
I've never heard of that play.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, Jelko can tell you all about it. He's got more good.
Wow.
He's so smart. Yeah.
What's your philosophy on the way you approach a back off at Barona versus, other casinos that might be pretty hostile?
Well, generally the casinos are hostile because they're ignorant or stupid, sometimes both. But we're just the opposite. We smile. We buy them dinner. I mean, we'll say, hey, you want to go? We go to the Hall of Fame. They take their picture over with us, and we're having a good time. They're not doing anything wrong. I know they're not doing anything wrong. They're trying to make a living, but it's our job to see if that can't happen, And if guys want to come up there and they just want to hang and eat, we let people come in and whatever they want to do. We don't worry about that. But what's really interesting is there are these nascent card counters. They think they're the apex predators in a casino, and they might have been playing a month. They're cocky. They pop off. They're snarky to people. You don't need to act like that. Just be nice. But there's some pretty. The players get scared too, so they get a little bit hostile.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things advantage players card counters could do themselves a favor by not making. Maybe part of why they get treated poorly is because of the way they're treating the casino staff.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, if you're going to act like a jerk, you're going to be treated like a jerk. Yeah. So just don't. But we go out of our way. I mean, and it's hard. We do everything in our power to not have any assholes working there. And we have zero tolerance. You're not rude to the staff. You're not rude to other people. You're nice to everybody and make it fun. And these people are gambling. A lot of these people, whatever people want to think, they play too much. A lot of people gamble too much. And they're scared. They're lonely. They're tired. And they lose. You got to give them something. But we just re-tiered everybody. So now all of our people are platinums it up. We give them $50 as soon as they walk in the door. $50 free bet every time you come to our joint. Tens of thousands of players. They walk in. There's your bet. What difference does it make? None. A bet means nothing to these people. They're not getting even with a bet. Yeah. So that's what we do. We like to give money back in bets. And it works.
What's your opinion on some of these new technologies, AI, facial recognition?
My opinion is it's going to be very scary because it's starting to work. I go through airports and they can recognize who you are. I've done a little research. You can go on AI yourself. There are certainly makeup techniques today that will soften that. There are colors that will actually change it a little bit. It reads different shadows. So if you have a little bit different shadow in your eyeshadow and stuff, they won't see you. But if they can change the bridge in the nose right here with some shadows in here, you can throw them off because they have these certain points. So whatever they come up with, we're going to beat. It's just a matter of fact. And that happened with mind play. We figured out how to beat mind play. It happened with... there was another one of them. I don't even remember the name of it. But there's been the RFID chips that they didn't work.
Yeah,
we saw to it.
Blackjack survey. What's that? Is that mind play or?
Yeah. Mind play had there was an array of cards, of cameras that were in the rack, and as the dealer would push the button, it would take a picture and show you what the bets were. Right. They may have beta tested that somewhere. And come to find out, when they take the picture like this and it goes click, it goes along the edge of the table. So if you have a $500 bet out and you put a $5 chip in front of that $500 bet, it reads the $5 bet. If you have a $10 bet out and you throw a $500 up in front of it and ask for change, it reads a $500 bet. So you can get it so bad. But they started using it for preferential treatment, and the state shut them down because it was signaling to them and surveillance when to shuffle, so they would preferential shuffle. And you can't do that. Yeah. So they were doing it. But there's been a bunch of stuff. They had RFID chips at the Hard Rock, and we made a lot there because I did a lot of testing in my lab. And it turns out that RFID works. A chip is basically, there's a piece of carved metal in the signal, and radar bounces off of it, if you will, and it sends it back on which individually dressed chip it is. Well, as they put this copper coil on your table, they didn't shield it from below, so the broadcast is going out and it's going up. So they could see this. So we just typed $1,000 chips to our knees, and we'd just raise it up. It would register in the computer. The dealer would never know it's registering as we've got $1,000 more. So our average bets were insane. We lived really well for about 6 months on that.
That is awesome.
That is so fun to play. And you're not breaking any laws.
So what's the story behind the Blackjack Ball?
Well, that is a long story. It goes back to 1993 or 4. They opened the MGM. They didn't believe in card counting. That's a pretty big statement when you're going to be the biggest joint in the world and you don't believe in card counting. And they opened, and we go in there, and there was a bar that's set up above, and we would sit up there and watch these other teams. And this was pretty funny that Daryl and Munchkin, there were a couple guys in this, and Van Ural, the black guy, you know him, he came up to my table once. I met him on that game, met Joko there. And we're looking down, and I'm watching a guy put his thumb outside of his pants, and he's holding a 4 down, and here comes a guy up to the table, and I'm watching him, and he's going around, and there's other guys standing, and we're starting to pick off everybody's signals, so we start moving in on him. One guy wears a T-shirt the next day that said "No Wonging," and Wong, for those who aren't aware, is Stanford Wong, who came up with the whole concept of counting down a deck from the outside and then wading in so you don't make a bet with a negative expectation. So we're watching this go on, and then other guys are cutting into us and moving in on our games, and this Van Ural, he came up, and I'm betting a couple by 1,000. And he said, "What time is it?" And I said, 13 o'clock. And the dealer looks at me funny. He said, "You sure?" And I said, "Yeah." And he put down $50. I'm sorry, he put down 500. He said, "Okay." And here it comes, and rag. And he said, "What time is it now?" I said, "It's 17 o'clock. He said, "Are you sure?" Now the dealer's looking at us like we're crazy. I said, "I'm sure." He goes 2 by 1,000. The whole board's just painted with Rembrandts. He goes, "You tell time good." And he had his hat turned on backwards. He's an engineer. He's a Georgetown master's degree. But he would act like one of these really, really entitled athletes with the hat on back and just act this whole routine. He was so good. So what happens is we're seeing all this, and we said, we got to figure out, do something. So we started meeting at Denny's. After we would play, Denny's was next to the Sands, and people would keep track of their EV. So if I went in and played with him, and I bet 1,000, for example, with a true of 5 is about a 2% edge. I had to keep track of that, and we would cut it up, half of it. I get half, they get half. So I would just pay them. So we're paying each other off. And, it was really complicated, but a lot of guys knew each other who knew each other. And while this is going on, I told my wife, I've got a good idea. What? I want to have a party where everybody feels safe, and they're going to come to our house, and you're going to cook for everybody. She likes to cook, but she started learning not to cook after a few of these parties. Anyway, my first party was 32 people in my basement, and we had the most specious contest. We had arm wrestling, we had chip shuffling, we had putting, we had boxing. We had so much fun, but we also had to know some of this stuff. And it started off at 32, and then it got to 50 something, and it cracked 80 at my house. And they demanded that I get they demanded that I start getting this catered because it was killing my wife. I said, okay, we'll do that. And then my kids went off to school and had a much bigger house then, so I downsized and got where I am now and had a great clubhouse. So it just started off from there. So we started getting bigger and bigger. And then as we hit the 25th, it became a much bigger deal. And Ed Thorpe became a showpiece for us. And it's turned into a pretty big event. It's got 189 people.
And it turned into a fundraiser for charity.
Oh yeah, for a charity that's helping people with problem gambling. I like all of it. I don't know if you're aware of this. Most of the AP world isn't. I called Ed about the date for the next year's ball, And it was about noon, and he said, hello. And I went, oh, no, Ed's sick. God, yeah, I love this man. He said, hi, Max, what's up? I said, well, I'm just calling to check on dates for availability. And he said, just a minute. And he came out and said, yeah, I could be available for then, the 17th. I said, okay. I said, Ed, do you feel as good as you look? And he said, oh, I feel great. He said, I just woke up. I'm in South Africa. And he told me what he was going to do. And the next week, and 4 weeks ago, Ed Thorpe became the oldest man in the history of civilization to walk on Antarctica.
Whoa.
How cool is that?
Very cool. And he looks great, and he's just sharp as ever.
He's just such a nice guy. Oh, yeah. Yeah, he's the greatest. But he did it. He actually walked on Antarctica at 93 or 4 now.
So. That's so cool.
Yeah, it is. It is. Nice guy to be the head of our subculture, if you will. I mean, he's just such a wonderful guy in every way you could imagine. Yeah, he's good.
You've worked side by side with some of the best Advantage players of all time. Do you have any stories or anything you could share that kind of encapsulates what it's like working with one of these Hall of Famers?
It's good and it can be bad. If you take the Gross Jeans and the Munchkins and Darryls and people like that, it's really good. We have also been out there with some Hall of Famers that we have some plays, like we had one, wherever we went, we never took more than 5,000. And we'd go to Biloxi. But each joint, we'd leave it at 1,000 and 5,000, and we'd hit 6 or 7 joints, and it's a great weekend, right? Mm-hmm. So we took big guy, Hall of Famer, famous TV. First bet's 5,000. We said, no, you can't do that. Well, I had an edge. We butted heads. I said, no, you can't do that. We're here to grind this. There's grinding games, but certain groups, all they understand is attack, get barred, attack. But there's some, you just don't give up those little cherry patches. So I've had some of that. God, this was one of the great plays ever. I relayed signals. I'm sitting across the pit, and the Samstown had shuffle machines that looked about like this stack here. And there were 8 decks, and I believe it was 8 and 8, might have been a 16 deck, very high, and it just riffled the cards together like this. We had 8 key girls and guys standing behind memorizing different coups on what would happen on splitting, double, what the cards would be, how they would do it. But they can't signal to him. So they're behind like they're walking, like they're watching. And the person who moved, I would look up. I'm sitting across at a table and he's looking at me. So he's not looking behind him. So they had to signal me and I had to signal him and then he'd signal that. This BP choked so bad. God, he was a big buffoon, but he wasn't very good at it. We wound up making money the second time, but what happened with mine is the other people on my table lost, and I'm sitting there trying to play one hand and signal like this. And, oh, man, it went crazy. But the second time, we whacked them really good, and they had no idea what happened. But I think it was an 8-way chop on that. It was a lot, but that was one of my favorite ones because it took all of those people to make it work. So one guy would take one deck and the next, and we'd cut, and all of a sudden a key card would come, and then they'd bang, and they'd send it. That was exciting. Yeah, that was really fun.
Is there a message or lesson that you would want to share to Advantage players watching this or casino operators?
Yeah, you're going to make a lot more money if you're nice. You just are. Being a bully and being scared, it doesn't become anybody. So those guys that are walking around like that, you're making a fool of yourself. You don't need to do that. And a player too. You're not running the show. The guy that owns that casino is pretty sharp. Don't forget that. They're not dumb.
Yeah.
And they don't have to let you in, but if you're nice enough, they're going to, and they'll be nice to you. Just don't abuse it. I'll recall one last thing that you were shocked by. One of your group, they got 86th, and this was about 15 years ago, and you'd ask why, and they'd come in on graveyard about, I think, 2 a.m. or something, and they got barred, and they came back about 8, with different clothes on in front of the same floor supervisor, and they got barred. And she got so pissed, she had them 86er just because they pissed her off. You got to remember, you're dealing with people. Don't do that. Don't tweak them. Don't do anything. Be nice to them. If you're nice to people, they'll be nice back, usually. But just walk away, and if you're going to be a sucker, be a quiet one. That's about it.
Max, thanks so much for your time sharing your stories with us. If you want to learn more about blackjack and card carrying, check out Blackjack Apprenticeship on YouTube.